There is a pain that leaves no trace on the body, no blood, no scar, no scream. Yet it corrodes something far more fragile than flesh, your very sense of self. This pain is disrespect. You feel it when your words are brushed aside as if they carried no weight, when your kindness is taken for weakness, when your generosity is received with cold indifference. And the most devastating blow often comes not from the insult itself, but from your silence as it happens. Machiavelli, the relentless examiner of human nature, would call that silence not humility, but surrender. He would warn that disrespect is like a weed creeping into the garden of your identity. Tolerate it once, and it begins to spread until it strangles your confidence and steals your worth. This is not a matter of fragile pride, it is a question of power. It shapes how the world sees you and, even more dangerously, how you begin to see yourself. You were raised to be kind, to forgive, to turn the other cheek. There is beauty in that teaching, but beauty is not protection. In a world that often rewards strength over sentiment, unguarded kindness becomes a currency without value. That is where Machiavelli's ruthless clarity slices through illusion. His book, The Prince, was not written for saints who dream of perfect worlds. It was written for those forced to survive in a world that devours the naive. He saw that the virtuous are not destroyed for their goodness, but for their failure to wield it strategically. His most famous line captures this harsh truth. It is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both. Yet, this was never a call to cruelty. It was a command to command. Fear, in a sense, is not violence. It is the power of presence, the authority of boundaries that cannot be ignored. It is about becoming so undeniable that disrespect finds no ground to grow. Now we bring Machiavelli's insight into the world you inhabit. You may not wear a crown or sit on a throne, but you are the ruler of your time, your energy, and your space. Like a fortress guarded by high walls, your life depends on the strength of the boundaries you defend. Leave the gates unguarded, and they will be breached. Respect works like a mirror. It reflects exactly what you project. When you stand upright, it returns dignity. When you bend too easily, it reflects something smaller, something weaker. People read those signals whether you intend them to or not. Disrespect often does not shout. It comes disguised as a joke at your expense, as a compliment wrapped in condescension, as a decision made without your voice in the room. Too often we dismiss these moments, laughing along to avoid conflict, staying silent because we fear confrontation, or because we doubt our worth. Yet each time you accept less than you deserve, you teach the world that less is acceptable. Not out of cruelty, but because human nature is opportunistic. People test limits without even realizing it, and when they meet no resistance, they push further. This is where Machiavelli's lion and fox enter. They are not relics of Renaissance politics. They are living archetypes for navigating modern life. The fox sees through deception. It recognizes the hidden trap inside flattery, the quiet power play concealed beneath polite words. It is the instinct that senses when so-called kindness is a bid for control. The lion, in contrast, does not roar at every slight. Its strength lies in the gravity of its presence, an unshakable force that commands respect without a word spoken. In practice, this means mastering the discipline of measured response. Not every insult deserves your energy, but every insult deserves your awareness. You may not always confront, but you must always adjust. That adjustment might mean pulling back, drawing a line, cutting access. Stop placing your trust and your time in the hands of those who treat them carelessly. Respect is not something to be begged for, it is something to claim. And sometimes the most powerful claim you can make is to walk away until respect is the only response left. True power at its core is stillness. It is the calm that unsettles, the silence that draws attention without effort. When you recognize your worth and refuse to tolerate disrespect, your silence transforms into its own commanding language. Machiavelli understood this psychological force with exact precision. He knew that people do not react to the private truth of your inner world. They react to the signals you project. Confidence, strength, and value are not things you announce. They are things you embody. In a culture obsessed with fleeting approval, where validation is chased like a drug, authentic self-respect is rare. And in rarity lies value. What is valuable is guarded. What is guarded is treated with care. So how do you shift this balance in your favor? It begins with redefining what kindness means. True kindness is not about enduring mistreatment or making yourself small for the comfort of others. It is about discernment. It is the choice to be generous yet unexploitable, compassionate yet unyielding. Machiavelli would remind you that your worth multiplies the moment you stop trying to prove it. Stop over-explaining your value. Stop apologizing for simply existing. Stop shrinking yourself so others can stand taller. When you anchor yourself in your own dignity, you stop chasing approval and start commanding acknowledgement. And people sense it. They hear it in your silence. They feel it in your presence. Their words grow more careful, their attention sharper, because you are no longer asking to be seen, you are requiring it. Disrespect cannot survive in the presence of unshakable self. That is the art. Not to retaliate with venom, but to elevate yourself above the arena where disrespect thrives. To make your presence the standard others must reach if they wish to remain in your orbit. This is not arrogance. It is alignment with reality, the reality that your time is sacred, your voice has weight, and your heart is not a public square for careless footsteps. So stop explaining the damage their words cause. Stop granting endless chances to those who squandered the first. And above all, never confuse silence born of fear with the silence born of strength. Machiavelli understood a truth most resist. The world is not fair, but it is predictable. Those who learn to read people, who master the unspoken rules of power, move with a kind of elegance that feels inevitable. This is not about manipulation or petty games. It is about playing with wisdom, knowing when to speak, when to withdraw, and when to sever ties not in rage but in composure. For the highest act of power is not retaliation, it is departure. And when you live in this way, something extraordinary occurs. The world begins to bend around you. People rise to meet the standard you embody, or they fade into the background. Either way, the victory is yours. This is how disrespect is dismantled, not by shouting louder, but by embodying the stillness of the lion and the sharpness of the fox, by letting silence carry more weight than words, by ensuring that the first person who never diminishes you is yourself. From there, the question deepens. How does this philosophy breathe in your daily life? How does it shape the way you handle relationships, decisions, and the private dialogue you carry with yourself? The answers lie in the mirror. You now understand the lesson: the lion's poise, the fox's cunning, the quiet authority that commands respect without ever begging for it. You know that tolerating disrespect, even in its most polite disguise, only invites more of it. But awareness alone is not transformation. The true test comes when these principles leave the page and enter your lived reality, your relationships, your home, your workplace. The reflection you face each morning. The challenge sharpens when disrespect wears the face of someone you love, someone bound to you by blood or history. Walking away from a stranger is easy. Walking away from the familiar wound is far harder. Part of you still aches for recognition, for their choice to see you fully. That longing is the trap. Believing that patience will one day teach them your worth is a lie that chains you to the cycle. Machiavelli knew that when sentiment outweighs sovereignty, rulers fall, and the same is true for individuals. Disrespect does not always thunder into your life. Sometimes it whispers, sometimes it hides in neglect, in the silence of being overlooked, and always being the last considered or the first blamed. You may excuse it as unintentional, but intention does not erase impact. A wound is still a wound, whether the blade slipped by accident or struck with design. This is where most falter. They wait until disrespect becomes unmistakable, expecting it to roar before they act. But by then, the damage has already been done. Self-respect does not usually shatter in a single blow. It erodes slowly, drip by drip, moment by moment. The question is, how to act sooner, how to see the signs before they harden into wounds. The answer lies in paying attention to the silences between moments. Notice how you feel when you leave someone's presence. Do you feel lighter or heavier? Do you feel more like yourself or less? The world rarely insults you in one dramatic stroke. It tests you quietly, probing, searching for weakness, waiting to see if you will flinch. When you do not respond, the pressure deepens, not because others are always malicious, but because you have signaled that your boundaries are flexible, not firm. To break this cycle, you must tune into those subtle signals, those whispers from your instincts that tell you something is wrong. That is where Machiavelli's clarity becomes a weapon, teaching you to see the test before it becomes a wound, to act with precision before the damage compounds. Now picture a different way of living. Imagine each boundary you set not as an act of fear, but as an act of self. See yourself addressing disrespect without anger, yet with unshakable clarity. Envision walking away not because others reject you, but because you refuse to remain in any place where you must beg for worth. This is the meeting point between philosophy and self-respect, where dignity becomes not a fleeting feeling, but a discipline. Every time you choose not to explain away your boundaries, you strengthen them. Every time you step back from those who will not listen, you affirm that your soul matters. Every time you refuse to trade dignity for temporary peace, you take your rightful place as the ruler of your own life. Never forget this truth. You are always teaching the world. With every silence, every refusal, every acceptance, you declare what will and will not be allowed. And more importantly, you are teaching yourself. Machiavelli grasped this truth with the precision of a master strategist. He understood that the mind will justify what the heart allows. People remain in spaces that quietly erode them because they wrap those spaces in stories. They call it love. They call it family. They call it loyalty. But is loyalty still a virtue when it demands the sacrifice of yourself? When your very identity must shrink to fit inside a room, you have to ask yourself if that room is sacred or if it is a prison disguised as nostalgia. The lion does not dwell in a cage, and the fox does not return to a trap. To reflect is to confront your life without illusion, and to ask, what have I tolerated that should have ended long ago? Who am I permitting to speak to me in ways I would never accept from a stranger, and why? The answer often points to fear, not fear of conflict, but fear of abandonment. We imagine that if we assert ourselves, people will leave. We fear that if we refuse to bend, we will be left alone. Yet the liberating truth is this: those who disappear when you honor yourself were never invested in your growth. They were feeding on your diminishment. Their departure is not a loss. but a clearing. It is the creation of space where true respect can grow, where new people can step in, people who do not shrink from your strength, who do not punish you for standing tall, who recognize your boundaries not as rejection but as clarity. Such people exist, but they find you only when you abandon the act of pleasing and step fully into the act of being. Only then will you become someone who would rather walk alone than remain surrounded by those who make you small. This is the highest form of power, not loud, not aggressive, but a stillness that cannot be moved. A self-respect that is not a performance but a state of being. In this light, Machiavelli's wisdom turns inward. It is no longer only about rulers and nations, but about the state of your own inner kingdom. Are you governing it with intention, or are you letting others dictate the laws? Are you protecting your crown, or do you let it fall every time someone challenges you? These are not abstract musings. They are the daily choices that shape who you are becoming. Each time you let someone speak over you, each time you dismiss your own feelings for the comfort of others, each time you laugh off disrespect, you hand away a brick from the foundation of your castle. Yet here lies the most empowering truth. Rebuilding can begin in any moment. Even now, in this very breath, you can decide that disrespect will no longer find a place in your life. Not because you are above others, but because you have remembered your worth. You can be kind while remaining clear, loving while standing firm, gentle without allowing yourself to be trampled, strong without sliding into cruelty. This is the paradox of true power, and the world respects it far more than you might imagine. When you shift into this state, some will resist. They may bristle at your resolve, but they will feel it. They will either rise to meet you or fade into irrelevance, and both outcomes are victories. Pause for a moment, and let this truth settle. You are not required to endure anything that diminishes your spirit. You were not born to be understood by everyone. You were born to honor your own dignity. Even without applause, disrespect withers, or self-respect takes root. And this self-respect is never granted by the world. It is claimed one brave choice at a time. Now we arrive at the final breath of this journey. The last mirror, not to reflect others, but to see yourself with clarity. To defeat disrespect is not to control the world, but to remember who you are within. Let us close with a truth your soul has always known. You have carried the silence of unspoken wounds, felt the sting of invisible slights, and given them a name. You now stand on the far side of that awareness, holding a deeper truth, not one granted by others, but one reclaimed in the quiet moments when no one is watching, when it is only you and the echo of your own worth. Your dignity is not something you owe. It is not a prize to be earned, nor a favor others can grant. It is your birthright, sovereign and unshaken, buried only under years of apology, fear, and the habit of making yourself small to keep others comfortable. The battle against disrespect is not a war against the outside world. It is the end of the conflict within you, the tension between who you are and who you have pretended to be for the sake of acceptance. Machiavelli, often misread as an architect of cruelty, was, in truth, a master of clarity. He did not demand ruthlessness. He demanded unwavering self. He revealed this: if you do not claim respect, you will be ruled by those who do. And it always comes down to moments that appear small, moments that shape the course of your life. The moments you silence yourself because your voice trembles. The moments you laugh along though you are the joke. The moments you stay when your heart has already left. But now you are learning to return to yourself, to the version of yourself that does not need to shout to be heard or whisper to be accepted. You reclaim this strength by realizing that self-respect is not pride but peace. It is not arrogance but alignment. It is the act of walking away from people, places, or titles that require you to shrink in order to be seen. The battle against disrespect begins and ends within you. It ends the moment you decide that tolerance is not always a virtue, that silence is not survival, that humility should never be worn as chains. There is a kind of love the world fears, not the loud or dramatic kind, but the quiet and unshakable love you give yourself when you step away from harm, without bitterness, without theatrics, without demanding to be understood, because the truth is, you do not need their understanding. You only need your own. Let the world mislabel you. Let them call your standards ego, your solitude arrogance, your boundaries rejection. Let them speculate. Let them weave stories about your distance. None of it matters when you hold to the truth. You are not cruel. You are clear. This clarity is your revolution. It is the way you defend the kingdom of your soul. Machiavelli taught that a ruler must sometimes abandon kindness when kindness becomes a weapon against them. The same law applies to you. There will be moments when survival requires defiance, when peace demands distance, when dignity insists that you stop chasing love and start commanding respect. True respect does not rise from perfection, but from presence. It comes from walking into a room with the certainty that you belong. It comes from looking into another's eyes and saying no without guilt. It comes from letting others leave and refusing to chase those who valued you only when you were convenient. This is how disrespect is eradicated, not by diminishing others, but by elevating yourself, by becoming the one who chooses yourself time after time without apology, not because you think you are better, but because you finally remember that no one else defines your worth. Not your past, not their opinions, not their silence. This is your crown. You do not wear it for their eyes. You wear it because it has always been yours. The world may adapt or it may fall away, but you remain unshaken, whole, and serene. In time, you will draw near to others who live as you do, people who speak with depth, who walk with integrity, who love without possession, and respect without condition. When you raise your standards, your life begins to filter itself. The noise falls away, and what is real remains. Let this be your quiet rebellion, not carried out with fists or fire, but with presence at calm. Undeniable presence that speaks louder than words ever could. Let your life declare what your lips no longer need to say. I will not tolerate what wounds me. Let your boundaries be your testimony that you have returned to yourself. Let your silence be sacred rather than submissive. Let your detachment be the highest form of love, the love for yourself that you will never again betray. And when old habits stir, when the urge to explain, to please, or to shrink returns, remember this: there is no honor in staying small for those who never saw your true magnitude. This is your turning point, not a moment of rage, but a moment of remembrance. You are not here to be agreeable. You are here to be strong, not in the shallow sense of domination, but in the truest sense of self. Power is not over others. Power is over your time, your mind, and your soul. And once you claim that sovereignty, no one can dictate your worth. No one can diminish what refuses to be diminished. So step forward, not with greater noise, but with greater depth. Release the craving to be understood, and embrace the necessity of being authentic. Choose the silence that strengthens you, the solitude that heals you, the dignity that shields you. This is how you dismantle disrespect, and not through one grand act, not through spectacle, but daily, quietly, with every boundary you enforce, every truth you honor, every part of yourself you refuse to surrender. This is not an ending. It is the beginning of a life that will never again settle for compromise. Let others question your change. Let them feel the absence of the old you. Let them face the weight of what they lost when you reclaimed your voice. And may you never again forget the truth. You were not born to be tolerated.